So my name is Judith McGuire. I'm the Senior Vice President of Products at Discover Global Network. I work out of our home office, which is located in Riverwoods, Illinois. It's just a little bit north of Chicago, so North Shore suburb of Chicago.
Nice. And obviously Discover is a global platform. How do you think the platforms will evolve over the next decade or so?
Well, certainly the payment industry has been evolving very rapidly over the past several years, really coming out of the pandemic. So our job as a network is to keep up with consumers and how they want to pay and where they want to pay. So it's taking a lot of time and a lot of innovation, but we are making great strides in kind of helping to meet customers and merchants where they want to be. So if you think about some of the evolving payment environments, maybe open loop transit, if you're in New York, maybe you've experienced that where you no longer have to buy a unique card to enter a transit station. Or going forward, we're working on solutions to support paying at vehicle charging machines. So if you don't have a subscription, you can still pay for charging your vehicle when you're traveling. So a lot of kind of innovative payment types as we kind of consumers want to pay in different ways and in different places.
What innovations are you seeing today that you think might be a little bit overhyped? It's not that big of a deal, or perhaps things that you think is being overlooked?
So I think one of the most interesting innovations that's happened in payments in quite a long time has been the use of tokens. So if you're not familiar with tokenization, this is what we do when we take payment credentials, so your PAN, your card number, and we replace it with random digits, so that if that card information is stolen, the thieves no longer have your actual card information and card credentials. They have what is called a token. And these tokens are more and more being used to facilitate payments. So think about when you make a payment using a digital wallet, often your credentials are tokenized inside that wallet. Often if you lodge your payment credentials with a merchant's website or in an app, those credentials are now more and more often tokenized. And I think this is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, it helps obviously mitigate the risk of the data being stolen and valuable. So it's a fraud mitigation tool. But also importantly for consumers who are, probably very unaware of this innovation in payments, they are much more likely to get an approval if their card credentials are tokenized, because the issuers can in the background do some kind of step up authentication and validation that the consumer is who they say they are. And I think the third thing that is really helpful for consumers that's associated with this technology is the ability to kind of automatically update these credentials. So if you have a card that has been expired and you have the card information lodged at a merchant website, when that card is tokenized, we can automatically update the payment credentials. So the consumer doesn't have to log into the merchant website and re-enter their payment credentials. So it really has some great benefits for merchants, for consumers, for issuers, and the networks facilitate the use of these tokens across many different use cases.
What do you say to those that are arguing that maybe credit card rails is going to be a thing of the past when technology companies are offering or giving consumers the choice to transfer from their bank to the merchant banks, as opposed to using the credit card to do something similar? How do you think about your role in that context?
I would say, certainly consumers have preferences about how they want to pay. And as a network, our job is to make it easy for consumers to use their Discover credit cards and debit cards wherever they want to use them. So as a network, we want to make sure that we're available from an acceptance footprint. We've got the technology to support the use case. We've got the tools to make it a seamless transaction for that consumer. And again, I think what our job is to make it as easy as possible for consumers to make the choice to use their Discover card. And we continue to find ways to evolve where consumers want to pay and how they want to pay. So I think if we're doing our job, I don't see the network rails becoming obsolete anytime soon.
Okay, and I guess building on that, then we've seen traditionally non-finance companies move into the finance space, thinking about Apple launching Apple Pay, or Facebook or Meta has explored blockchain and crypto. What do you think? What do you say to those that believe that these companies can build super apps that can replace traditional financial services or potentially even payment rails?
Sure. Again, I think of us as the payment rails, the facility behind the scenes that provides fast, seamless payments that enables these fintechs, these new players in the ecosystem to support kind of the front end user experience that they want to support. And then we're the rails in the back end to support fast settlement, authorization, fraud mitigation tools, all these other services that are very important as you think about making consumer payments safe and efficient.
And I guess sort of going forward on that theme and how we think about the future, there's been some global geopolitical tensions when it comes to payment rails. Obviously, Russia invading Ukraine, SWIFT and others made it impossible to facilitate transactions through their platform in Russia, which has sort of inspired Russia and other countries to think, hang on a second, we're kind of dependent on these US products. What's your take on the challenge of being a global payments network versus sort of local national schemes that are popping up? How do you think about those?
Sure. Well, we think about it a lot because we have developed a strategy to help kind of live together in that kind of environment as a global network. So one of the strategies we developed a few years ago is to partner with some of those domestic schemes. And those schemes work well in their own environments, in their own countries, but those cardholders sometimes do want to travel the globe. And it is very difficult, and you can imagine very expensive, to get global acceptance, get your technology deployed globally. So what we do with these local networks is we partner with them, and all the local traffic, so in-country traffic, stays on that network. But when those cardholders want to travel across borders, we provide the infrastructure to support the traveling cardholders. So it's really a win-win. The networks get to kind of evolve, do business in their local networks, but they have the benefit of Discover to support their cardholders for the use case of travel.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a conversation these days without discussing AI. How are you leveraging AI, whether it's internally or consumer-facing value propositions? Any insight there you can share?
Yeah. I mean, like others, we're looking for that intersection of problems that can be solved with AI, and then AI solutions that have technology that has evolved well to solve those problems well. And so we do a lot of proof of concepts to try and kind of test out different technologies and use cases. Obviously, fraud is probably the one we talk about in payments the most from a use case perspective. And certainly we have deployed fraud mitigation tools using AI across Discover. We have a program, in fact, called Discover Enhanced Decisioning, which is one where a merchant is able to send extra data in their authorization request through the network to the issuer. That gives the issuer a lot more data to consume as they're making an authorization decision. And they use modeling tools, right, using that data to help make an authorization decision. And what we find with a tool like this is that we can authorize more transactions, have fewer false declines on behalf of that cardholder, so they get a great experience out of it. So that's kind of a good example of that fraud use case. We've done a few proofs of concept to, again, maybe solve some operational problems. And those run the gamut from kind of contract management services to training tools that can be automated. So anywhere that we feel like we have a problem that AI might be able to solve, and there is a provider that has a solution, those are the kind of intersections that we're trying to find and test out and see how it works.
Makes sense. Another thing that keeps coming up is blockchain. And today, you know more about this than I do, but it's not used in payments currently. But do you think there's a realistic path to where blockchain will become more integrated to a mainstream consumer payments experience in the next few years? What are your predictions around that?
I think in the near term, when you think about CBDCs, CBCDs, blockchain technology, I think that the most obvious near-term use cases are things like cross-border remittances, business-to-business type payments, where there's a real problem that can be solved. I am not sure in the very near term that the traditional consumer use case is going to be that strong. I think consumers have pretty deeply embedded habits about how they want to pay. And today the payments rails are very fast, very efficient, and very secure, and consumers are comfortable with that security. I think probably part of what's missing to drive more kind of everyday spend using these newer technologies is we need the regulatory landscape to kind of solidify, and you need to have all of the rules, the consumer benefits, the consumer protections, what happens if there's a challenge with the transaction, things like that. And so all of those things that networks typically support aren't necessarily there in some of these other environments. And I think those things will need to be adapted to support these types of, blockchain or crypto payments for more kind of everyday spend.
Judith, thank you very much for your time and for your insight. Appreciate that.
Sure.